Hello everyone and welcome to Organic Matters, the podcast brought to you by the Irish Organic Association. It's a slightly blustery day here in lovely County Galway and I'm on the lovely farm of Blátnaid Gallagher, and we've just passed just the most amazing, beautiful traditional meadow, and Blátnaid's been telling me about all the species here, and I've seen sheep, and I've seen already seen a building for social farming, and there's been horses. But Blátnaid, I suppose, give us a little bit of the lay of the land. I guess, how big is the farm and where are we?
Hello Hannah, you're very welcome, and it's a privilege to be part of the Irish Organic Association podcast Matters. So what I'd like to just talk about today really is the farm itself, which is called Meadows. We're located in East Galway, so we're on the border with Galway and Roscommon. And we farm here over 100 acres. Most of that is actually dedicated to wildlife and to nature. I'm very proud to have the role of a Farming for Nature ambassador, as well as being a proud member of the Irish Organics Association. The farm is broken up into various different plots. You mentioned the meadows, so we have meadows that we close in April. That means to people, non-farming people, remove livestock from it, and we literally close the gate and let nature do its work for the next few months over the summer. So we allow the grasses to go into seed, and what that means is that we've got better seed dispersion. So traditionally farmers would actually cut the grass when it's sort of leafy and it's softer and it's more palatable for the animals in the winter time when it's been preserved. But what we do with the hay meadows is that we do the opposite. We'll actually allow it to go past the grass leafy stage, and we allow it to go into flower, and then we also allow it to go into seed. And what we found is that it's actually starting to increase the soil fertility, and it's probably because there's such a diversification of species there that it's getting everything from good drainage to just a very, very palatable hay that we feed to the sheep and the horses. So what do we do on the farm? Yeah, you mentioned the social farming. It's a huge part of the enterprise. We farm with Social Farming Ireland 2 days a week. We work with people that have intellectual disabilities. They may have mental health issues, or they may actually have physical disabilities. And what we do is we encourage them to come to the farm here and to work with us so that they get the benefits of fresh air, working with animals, working in the outdoors, and the core and most important part of every day here at Meadows with social farmers is that they must have fun. And I mean that in a very light-hearted way. It's almost like a military standard here that they have to go home having a little bit of crack and a belly laugh at some stage.
Well, I got a big warm embrace when I came, so it is definitely part of it, like you said, military standard. It has to happen. And I know that we're going to talk a lot as well about the Galway Wool Co-op as well, which you're a founding member. I mean, you've been driving for Force Stewart, but we're going to go see some Galway sheep, and we'll fill people in on a bit more of what you've touched on earlier as well.
Yeah, absolutely. The co-op is a big passion of mine. I was a student in NUIG doing a Masters in Agricultural Innovation, and I didn't need a Masters in Innovation to realise that the sheep farmers here in Ireland and all across Europe have been deleted. They've been excluded from the story of where wool comes from, and I suppose my research has discovered that that's because wool is a commodity. It's like food, it's like grain. It's been up there. It's been one of the oldest commodities traded across the New World and the Old World for centuries.
But it was so valuable. I mean, I think for maybe any, I know farmers will know this, but any non-farmers listening, I mean, the wool trade at one time, I mean, it was so valuable. It was one of the it still is one of the best fabrics around, but I mean, there were cathedrals built off the money off it, like giant cathedrals, and it made people rich. I mean, it made farmers rich. I mean, it was that the wool was the valuable part. It wasn't the sheep meat at all. It was the wool part that was valuable, but it's become nearly worthless now.
Well, I don't believe it's worthless, but I believe the farmer has been excluded. So therefore, the worth, the value is still there. There are still people making huge, and I mean millions and billions of euros worldwide from wool. And actual fact, wool is now back in favour as much as it ever was with the general public. We've never stopped. There's never not been an appetite for woolen-based products. But what people tend to not realise is the supply chain has completely broken down here in Ireland. The Irish wool grower has not been represented, and it's not just here in Ireland. People think that it's a problem here. The reason why it's so galling for me and for others here is that we actually have an international reputation. Like, you could go to any airport of, Shannon, Dublin, Cork, out of Ireland. The first thing you're going to see is a little sheep keyring. You're going to see a little sheep mug. You go to any of the major tourist sites around Ireland, and they are heavily populated with heritage products that don't include Irish wool. Now, up until 2 years ago, I was led to believe by the industry itself that the reason why there was no Irish wool in these products was that it wasn't suitable. And now we've discovered that that's categorically incorrect. That's another foible that's been going on within the industry here in Ireland.
They can use essentially a little bit.
Yes, but they can use all of it. It's how it's processed, Hannah. And I mean, one of the things that I want to talk about today is, the importance. All of us people who are involved in organic farming, we've been outliers for many years. Now I'm happy to say that demand for organic and well-produced food is on the rise again. So we're starting to become part of the mainstream, the circle. People are starting to become interested and curious about organic farmers and why they're so passionate. But the same happens to people that are involved in the wool industry. You will be excluded to the detriment of, if you don't become tenacious, and if you don't have, as my husband once said, if you don't have a nose like Muhammad Ali from the amount of doors that have been slammed shut on the co-op. Like members of the Irish textile industry here, up until this year when we partnered with Avoca, blatantly refused to use Irish wool in their products.
But it's so insane because it's such a popular thing, and it's such a statement piece to get, a wool blanket. I mean,
Yes.
We have a wool blanket in our house that we've had since the 1930s, and it's been passed through the generations, and it's lasted this long, and there isn't a hole in it, and it's a real... Yeah, it's a real comfort piece, and it's family heirloom at this stage, and they cost a fortune.
Yeah, there's a lot involved in the process. But if you were to take a blanket, just take this for example. Okay, sit down, bear with me now for a minute. You're going to buy a blanket that's €100. It's going to take a kilo of wool, thereabouts, to make the blanket. Now that's just an approximation. The farmer at the moment is getting €2, 20 cent a kilo, right? That means that out of that €100, the farmer has only got 20 cent. Within the co-op, because we're promoting the native Irish breed, which is called the Galway, we're looking for €2.50. How can anybody justify that €1.30 markup is going to make a detrimental difference to the end cost to the consumer? That's some of the BS that we're listening to, that we have been listening to. Nobody has talked about the fact that how wool is processed makes a huge difference as to how it feels. We've been told that Irish wool is itchy, it's scratchy. Over in Scotland, they're actually making jumpers from coarse mountainy wool. Why? Because they want to. Why? Because there's an appetite for truth, transparency, authenticity, and the inclusion of the grower. Stop deleting us. Stop taking us out of the story and pretending that we're there. We're not. And those that are using Irish wool, be proud to say, this is what I paid the farmer. Start the process. Make other people jealous about the fact that you actually have real Irish grown wool that supported a farmer, that supported a community, and most importantly, keeps people within the industry. Sheep farmers are leaving day after day after day. It's a highly labour intensive farm unit. You have to love sheep to work with them. You really, really do. I'm fortunate that I have that little bug, and I really do like the sheep.
Fortunate or a bit mad?
A bit mad, a bit both, a little bit of both. But what I do know is that we need fair representation. We cannot continue to market Irish heritage produce without the inclusion of the grower. And when and if we do include the grower, they must be fairly remunerated. It's not fair to keep, Hannah, €5 to shear a sheep, and the average farmer is only getting 60 cent. So in actual fact, it's costing that farmer.
Yeah.
So when somebody says they're getting 20 cent a kilo, they're not really, because they've already spent €5 to try and remove the fleece. So in a way, is that daylight robbery?
And then people are getting easy care sheep because they don't have to shear them, and there's that whole kind of thing. But the sheep in front of us. Now, I am not a sheep fan, Blátnaid. Anyone who listens to this podcast regularly will know that. They are very cute sheep. It has to be. It has to be said.
And they're very big.
Are they?
Let's walk
Okay.
amongst
Okay.
them.
We'll go.
Amongst them. So they can go. Okay. So let's talk about the sheep.
Now, I don't know anything about sheep. I grew up on a beef farm. We now have a bit of a dairy. So anyway, so for me, for the farmers who don't have sheep, and for the people who've never had sheep, so tell us a little bit about the Galway breed and why they're so special.
All right. So she's native to Ireland. She was a super breed that was developed back in the 18th century by a geneticist of the time called Lord Bakewell. And he wanted to put together a sheep that would have an abundance of wool. Going back to your earlier points, and you're so right, Hannah, the British Empire was actually built on the back of a sheep. The British Empire was built on their trading in wool fleeces from their colonies to non-colonies. But so Lord Bakewell, go back again, he developed the sheep breed. And what she is, she's large and she's polled. So what polled means is that she doesn't have horns. I think you may have noticed already she's quite docile. So when you walk into a sheep, generally into a field, generally sheep will just woohoo,
Yeah,
they're
they'll
gone.
go the opposite direction.
No,
No, these ones are really curious, had a little look at me and then went back to eating grass.
Yeah, back to eating grass, and that's very important. They love grass. They really thrive outdoors. So being an organic farmer, it's very important to me that I'm able to sustain a diet, sustain grass in front of my livestock all year round. So, you know, we all know that tight period when it comes in February and March, and it's like, oh God, you know, I don't dread November, December, January at all. It's February and March. It's that waiting for the grass to pick up again. But I'm lucky enough that what I find with the Galway is she'll put on weight. Now these girls in front of you, some of them are up on 90 kilos.
Okay.
It's like, so they're effectively baby cows. They're just so big. So they'll retain that fat right up until I need them to ensure that they have it. So they put on, I mean, I suppose it's like nature intended. They put on a lot of weight during the summer, and then during the winter time they have that fat storage capacity so that it can actually get them through
You're being wrestled by some donkeys here, I should say, as well, in the middle of this. Are the donkeys here to protect the lambs? Because
No.
that can be an issue, but
Yeah,
that
they
can be an issue.
Yeah.
In terms of foxes taking lambs or even crows attacking lambs
Yeah.
and things like that. So people sometimes have donkeys with them. But no, the donkeys are here just
Come on.
for podcasts.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're just here for the podcast.
Yeah.
No, the other lovely thing about the Galway, she's a very protective mother. So I've seen from time to time when the dog might come for a little walk with me, she'll actually start stamping her little foot, like any mother will do, whether it's a mare or whether it's a cow. They put the head down, they're showing the fox in the field or the dog in the field, don't come near me. So they're not aggressive towards humans, but they are quite, the Galway, they're very protective over them. They're well able to defend themselves. I've actually seen them one day here with a dog that they weren't familiar with, and by golly, one of the O's actually turned the dog up on its head and over again. So like they while they're docile, and go back to that docile nature, which I think is lovely. Again, it goes back to me. I'm an organic farmer. I see myself as somebody who's farming extensively rather than intensively, and getting the benefits of that, not just financially but within my own personal health and well-being. But because the Galway were always around farmers that were full-time farmers at the time, they seem to have developed a bond with humans, and as a result of which, I think that's part of the reason why they don't run when you come into a field. They're so used to having their shepherd with them or their shepherdess with them that it's important for them to just almost like they form communities as well. There's little gangs, so the nieces, the mothers, the daughters, the aunties, they'll all stay in little cliques together. They don't tend to, thankfully, want to leave the field, and that's really important because
there is this saying that if you want to fall out with your neighbour, get sheep. I'm wondering about some of the technicalities. Okay, so for maybe sheep farmers who are listening, because I know you're trying to get people to take on more Galways. Like, what are they like to get in lamb? Are they fertile? When do you usually have them lambing? And maybe how many ewes per lamb or lambs per ewe are you expecting on kind
so
of
my
an average?
lambing rate is up around 1.7, and that's just based on the statistics that I do with my own herd here on the farm.
Are you happy with that?
I am. I would, I'd be happy with that, because it means then that I'm having, some twins. I mean, they do throw triplets, but personally I just find the triplets can be hard work.
I think
You're always
everyone
ensuring
finds them hard work.
You're always trying to ensure that there's hind teeth there somewhere. So everybody wants twins, but if I come along with what I've found is any of them that are reared a single, they're like, we'll see them when we go up and have a look at the ram lambs. Like they were born in March, and some of them are up on 45 kilos already on grass. That's with no meal. But go back again to the grass element of things. I'm in organic farming. I don't put out fertiliser. I don't spray the fields. But when I did come here, because there had been a lot of invasive weeds here on the farm, it was actually my neighbour that said to me, "Why don't you get some sheep? Because they're a great way of cleaning up grassland." Yeah. If you're not putting out chemical fertiliser, and you shouldn't be if you're listening to this podcast, I would hope that you wouldn't be if you're going to be listening to the podcast, is that, if you have a couple of sheep, what they'll do is they actually nip the tops off. So if you look around us here, I do a good bit of topping in this field now, because it was one of the not so good fields that was left to me. But what they actually do is they love the tips of the actual trestles. So what they'll actually do is they'll actually keep topping for me. Now, they might be a little bit too strong just there in front of us, but generally as the trestles are coming up, and they love baby ducks.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, you might be converting a few people now.
They love, well, I don't know about all sheep, but I know definitely there's a particular time when we go up to the back field here, and what happens is, like, it's a legacy from my uncle. He had a ring feeder out there. There was a lot of compaction in the soil. There was a lot of docks left over. But if I can get enough of them into that little field, put up a temporary fence, once they get at the docks when they're only quite young, they love them. They thrive on them. Yeah, it's great to actually walk around and see sheep eating docks. There's a little guilty pleasure in it, Hannah, so there is, Go back to the sheep again and the meat. So what's the biggest downfall? We don't have enough of them. So I have so many people that are actually trying to get sheep off me. I'm down in Ballymaloo teaching with the organic farm school down there. At the end of the month, they're saying, can you bring down some meat? And I'm going, gosh, yeah, again, supply chain, like anybody that's trying to work from a basis of, farm to fork, and I know you're doing some fantastic work yourself with your dairy products, and now with the pigs. But it can be difficult just to try and ensure that you have, and if I build up a relationship with a restaurant or with a butcher, I want to ensure that there's consistency there. And because there's so few numbers and there's so many people looking for the females now, everybody wants to Galway ewes, Galway lambs. I don't know, do we have enough to just warrant building a relationship? Definitely, I think it's, their taster menus, definitely let people know what it's like. So what is it like? It's extremely succulent. And when you kill the carcass, they've got a really good up on 48% kill out rates. So what you're doing is you're actually getting more meat for your buck. And you're getting a story about the heritage of the fact that this breed has been around for so long. And a lot of people say to me, sure, there's loads of Irish breeds out there. Why is this one so popular? Well, this one has 102 years of provenance, and behind it is a very hard working group of farmers from the Galway Sheep Breeders Association, who I only met, by the way, in the last decade. And what they had been doing is they had been meticulously recording the lineages of these sheep.
Wow, okay.
They had been getting so involved in that wonderful bureaucracy that comes with being part of a DAF scheme. And we all love them, Hannah, don't we? Yeah. The bane of our lives, but somebody has to keep the regulation there. So what these farmers did was they hopped on board and they did what they were asked to do. So there's a lot of sheep breeds here in Ireland that could be classified as native Irish, but those breed societies haven't put the 102 years of hard work into getting it there as a breed society.
And they are a very good looking sheep. They have this beautiful white fleece, I can see that. And I mean they're big ladies as well. We might, Blátnaid, head back up, because I think people would be interested as well in hearing your journey to the farm as well, and maybe a little more about social farming as well. So we'll stroll back up.
Yeah, that's lovely.
Blátnaid, we've come down now to look at some sunbathing, I would say well endowed rams. Is that fair?
They are, yeah. So they were born in March this year, and most of them will go for breeding. Some of them that haven't actually quite made the Sheep Ireland cis category, they might actually be butchered. And I think I was saying to you, the meat from the heritage Irish lamb is just so succulent. It's always really well marbled. I akin it to the wagyu of beef. She marbles from the inside out because she's on grass all year round. She's not putting layers of fat on the external muscle. She's actually well marbling within the muscle itself, or he. And it just lends to a really wonderful texture. And there's a lovely saying, Hannah, and rud san and what's rare is wonderful. And if you can manage to get yourself, I think last year we only produced 800 wethers in the whole country. So if you can manage to get yourself, through a local farmer or through a local butcher, a genuine heritage Irish lamb, it's a special moment, because you're having something really rare.
We'll stroll over here a minute, because something that I think people will find interesting is that although you came to this farm, back and forth to this farm as a child, you've only really been here full time, is it 10 years? And it was a lot of work. It was a lot of work. And people will find that interesting, because you think people say, oh, she landed on her pig's back, or so the pig's back, if she just inherited a farm. But it took a lot of work. I drove up, and for anyone driving up, it's a lovely driveway and there's post and rail fencing, but you were saying there wasn't a fencing post around.
There wasn't a gate hanging in the entire farm. I think we hung 42 gates in total. And what happened was, my lovely Uncle PJ, who was a character in himself, he had hoarders. And generally, like a lot of people in the farm, you always hold on to something. I'll need that for again now, so I won't throw that out. It'd save me a run to the hardware shop or the co-op. So he kept everything. And then on top of keeping everything, people were delighted to bring him. So whether it was a dog, or whether it was a horse, or whether it was a three-legged donkey, or whether it was an old carpet or a duvet, everything got brought here.
Okay.
And then he wouldn't part with it. And then eventually it actually became an issue, because it was rodent infested, and that had to be a worry for his neighbours at the time as well. But he was such a gentle soul, I suppose they were afraid to do anything about it. Just to break my mother's heart, because she was running the farm effectively. She was doing all the paperwork and the admin, from her sitting room in Galway. So we decided that, the first thing that was going to have to go was the rubbish. And I think it was something like 16 tonnes of metal, plastic, cardboard, pallets, old machinery, cars, trailers, oil tanks. You've seen the photographs. There was over an acre and a half of just rubbish and debris. And with that came the nettles. And with what came the nettles, then you had to have weed control. And I knew from the outset I was going down the organic road. You see, for us, in some ways, it made sense. We had been farming here as a family farm for hundreds of years in an extensive farming method. And there was never pressure on them to intensify. I suppose there was no big mortgage on the farm. They didn't have any debt. So they were just tipping along nicely, just making what they needed and living life. So I just decided, we walked through some of the meadows there. They're awash with clover. For anybody that's from a non-farming background, clover is farmer's gold. So effectively we're walking through fields of gold. I didn't
it fixes nitrogen automatically in the soil naturally.
That's one of the better things for it. And then the clover itself, the actual flower itself, is. I can remember walking through the meadows as a kid, and we used to pull the petals off, and then we took the bottom ends of them because they were so full of sugar and sweet. So when animals get an opportunity to graze it, it's a double win because they're getting all these sugars into their systems, and that's giving them energy, and the energy is converted into muscle, which is it's just brilliant. But going back to the work, I have to say there was a little bit of, will we or will we not? But I had the vision. I knew what was there. I knew what was underneath all the dirt. And I knew that the plastics and the pallets eventually would go away. Now we're still picking plastic up. Would you believe it 10 years later?
I would, I'd believe it.
You see this tiny little bit of plastic and you're going, you poke at it.
If you start picking, you don't know how far you're going. How deep is that plastic there?
Going. So the social farming is great.
I wanted to talk about social farming because in addition to say picking up bits of plastic and 16 tons of the kind of debris you got rid of, we walked past some sheds that you've renovated. One was a hen house and one was a turf shed as well. And you're doing social farming. So explain social farming to someone who doesn't know what it is.
Okay, so what it does is Social Farming Ireland is the umbrella group, and that's a very professional body, and they have done extensive work with their partners in Europe, and they've discovered that the outcomes for people who are getting an opportunity to farm or just work in the outdoors or work just in a really nice environment has huge benefits and measured.
They could have mental or physical disabilities. They could be suffering from depression, and they just find it beneficial being out in the farm doing kind of light farm tasks.
They won't mind me saying it, but we actually have a group that come from Clarebridge, and that's an overspill from Dunleary Rehab. So two of the guys actually have acquired brain injuries. So they at one point in time would have been, something had happened in their lives that meant that they're now, one of them actually can't eat. But they come to the farm with us here, and you wouldn't believe it, but just little things like feeding the horses. Or the other day I gave them a job to help me do a bit of sanding. Now I'm holding the sander, but the pride that those men, they were actually sitting tall in their wheelchairs. I know that kind of sounds a little bit weird, but they just got such pride. And we always finish the day off with a game of cards, and I'd be slagging them going, this is what the farmers of Ireland are at now, lads, they're playing cards in the afternoon. Or we get a great chuckle out of it, because one of the lads, he comes from Mayo and he knows himself how hard farmers work. It's far from playing cards in the middle of the afternoon they're at, but we just do a lot with them when they're here on the farm, and the lovely thing about it is the farmer is actually remunerated. It's not like your farm, your time, or what you're putting into it has been taken for granted. Social Farming Ireland form a partnership for you with your local agency. For here now, we do a lot of work with the Brothers of Charity, so we would have a 25-week block with them, and we have nothing to do with the finances or any of that. All we have to do is keep our diaries, do our induction days, and ensure that everybody's having fun on the day. The team at Social Farm in Ireland are absolutely incredible, and they do you, so you don't have to go out looking for clients. They'll actually bring clients to your farm. And you know what? Aside from the fact that it's another egg in the basket, I love it, Hannah. I love the crack. You can actually be yourself and be a child and have the fun. And I suppose I was a bit of a messer in school, so I can get to be back into that, court jester mode, if it's only for 4 or 5 hours a week. But that the people that you're working with that day are benefiting from your lightheartedness. Yeah. That's the part that I love. Then I do a little bit of work with Farming for Nature, and then I'm just finishing up a 2-year role. I was an ambassador with Fleara. So Fleara is female-led innovation across rural areas of Europe, and there were 2 people from Ireland picked, Ursula Kelly from Cormac Tagging and myself. And what we've had to do is participate in workshops and represent Ireland at various different European workshops and meet fellow entrepreneurs. And they're not just like buzzing entrepreneurs in a business sense. A lot of the women that I've met have come from social enterprises, and they've been real leaders in their communities. And that's fantastic, because you're not just meeting, you know, like, as I said, business people. You're meeting, like, honest to goodness farmers like ourselves. You're getting to meet people who've set up community involvement. You're getting to people who've started maybe, say, a rural enterprise where there wasn't one. And the one common denominator, all these women are just mad for work. Like, they just, you know, they just don't know how to stop. And I suppose that's really what keeps a lot of people going, is wanting to get the job done and get it done right, and knowing yourself that sometimes it means rolling up your sleeves, sticking on the boots and getting out there and doing it yourself. So there's a good bit going on. I have an open day coming up on the 31st of August. I hope you don't mind me mentioning it. It's Farming for Nature. It's a project that they're working on this year called Inside the Gate. And it's a wonderful initiative where people from non-farming backgrounds get an opportunity to go inside the gates of people like myself, who are working really hard to restore nature and to embrace nature, and most importantly to love and to work with nature on the farm and get a kick out of that. So that's kind of what we're at. And then the biggest, and as they say in really bad English, the bestest news that we got this year was that after 5 years of hard work, voluntary, pro bono, unpaid, I managed to secure a deal with Avoca Ireland for the co-op. So this now means that they're actually going to work really hard with the wool, and they're going to put it into products that will be available for retail. Because I am blue in the face listening and answering emails from people going, where can we buy the wool? Where can we buy the wool? And despite the fact that we were selling it, it was just being held up, and we just couldn't get it out there into the market. We couldn't get it into people's hands. And I think Avoca have found a workaround, and they're going to have it available. And to get that kind of a result after just putting in days and nights of voluntary work, and to know how proud these farmers are. And I think also to know that other sheep farmers, and especially farmers, that there's a lot of sheep farmers now moving into organics. I think it's an easier transition than some of the other farm enterprises. But just for other sheep farmers to know that if the Galway Wool Co-op with a small heritage breed could do it, I believe, and we'll probably end on this note, there is huge light, not just for organic sheep farmers, but for organic sheep farmers who see themselves as wool producers and see the added benefit and the revenue that that's going to bring to their family farm. So I think we'll end on that. And as the lad says, Lynn, I said it already, and Ruddas Animas Iontuch, I think what is rare is wonderful. To be an organic farmer is a rarity in most enterprises here in Ireland. To be an organic wool producer is also very rare. And I'm really proud of it.
Blátnaid, thank you very much. And you can look up a lot of those things online, whether it's the Galway Wool Co-op or Farming for Nature. But thank you very much for tuning in. You've been listening to Organic Matters, the podcast brought to you by the Irish Organic Association. For more on organics, you can go to www.irishorganicassociation.ie. And we are now in season 4 of Organic Matters. So if you're interested in any more episodes, they are online on your podcast platform of choice. But for me, Hannah Quinn Mulligan, thank you very much. And we'll be back again in 2 weeks' time.